What's going on, YouTube? Ninja Turtle back at it again, and we have a brand new finished custom. This is Cable Nathan Summers. I don't know if this is considered like an X-Force costume. I'm not 100% sure on that, but what I do know is that in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, New Age of Heroes, Cable was first playable in the Versus series in that game, and this costume is what he wore, and that is what I made. Because if you don't know, I've been quietly, I guess, working on a Marvel vs. Capcom collection, and since it's impossible to just buy every character as an action figure made by Hasbro specifically, to go as that collection, you kind of have to make some. I don't think Hasbro is going to make this costume. Toy Biz already made one of these, so if you're looking for a Marvel Legends, one that is not a custom, Toy Biz Marvel Legends actually made this costume a long time ago, back in like 2000, I don't know, 5 or something like that. I never bought that because it was actually came out before I started collecting figures, for one, and two, it's just way too outdated would be a word, and then two, it's okay. I mean, I think it looks fine, but in general, I prefer the Hasbro's build and their bodies and stuff. He's a little bit beefier and taller, and so on. But that's because I made this. So this is a custom. You can't buy this, obviously, but I'm going to show you exactly how I put this together, what body parts these are, and any other nuances to this collection, to this figure, this custom, that there is. So I'm actually going to start with the accessories first, because I want to take them out of his hands, and then we can talk about the entire figure. First off, though, as far as weapons for Cable, you know, you can see them in his hands just fine there, but I actually don't have this one in his hands. This is not made by me, obviously. It's a little too detailed. This is for a Marvel Legend, and I am giving it to Cable for him to use, but I actually don't know what figure this came from. Because, you know, in the game he has the smaller pistol and the really big freaking Hyper Viper gun. So let's just pretend this is the Hyper Viper, just for the lack of anything better to use. But I don't remember what figure this came from. So let me know in the comments if you know what Marvel Legend this gun belongs to, because I am curious to know, and maybe that'll help other people that want to make this as a custom. They want to, like, oh, that's a good gun. You know, let them know where they can get this gun from. All right. I don't know, but we can start with the Scimitar Lance, because the Scimitar Lance, I made that. Although I didn't make this, I should say. This is a modified lance, and let's see if I can get this out of his hands. Oh no, yeah, that was what I was afraid of. Yeah, crap. So, yeah, some of the paint came off of there, and it's stuck in his hands. I can repaint this, no problem, but his hands are all nasty now, so that sucks. Either way, this lance, this is the Scimitar Lance, or at least it's supposed to be. This is just from a Marvel Legends Walgreens Namor. Cut the bottom part of it off and then sanded it up and repainted it. Also, there's little pieces right here that I cut off, just to get something a little bit more, you know, streamlined and not so many flimsy parts. But yeah, I'll have to repaint this. That won't be a problem. Well, I didn't want to take it out of his hands for this specific reason, because I figured this was probably going to happen. That's one thing that sucks about putting in weapons and accessories that are like a real tight fit in a character's hands. It's fine when Hasbro does it, because the plastic color is not painted usually. It's just a plastic. And then same thing with the hands, is usually all just plastic color, so there's no paint rub. But here I have to sand and paint all of this, and same thing there. And even though I did put a seal on this, it still rubs off when it's put in a character's hands, because it's so tight in their hands. I don't think it's going to be a problem with this gun though, but we'll find out right now. Either way, yeah, it's probably going to come out of his hands too. It's a little tight in there. I'm just going to leave that in there then. Anyway, this gun is it was purple. This came with the Domino figure, the older Domino one, and it did have like an extra, because this is for females' hands, it's for smaller hands. It did have like a little extra piece coming out and connecting this part there. I cut that off because his hands wouldn't fit in there, they're too big. And it works just fine now with his finger and on the trigger and so on, so it looks decent. Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna rub, so like I said, I'm just gonna keep it there. I try my best to paint it to be how it is in Marvel vs. Capcom. It's kind of hard to see all of the details on the gun in the game, but it's relatively white. I gave it a gunmetal gray little barrel there. This gunmetal black for all of this piece here. This mahogany brown on the handle, and then the rest of it is just white and so on. So it looks decent overall. So the body, the build of this is mostly $1. It is mostly just a Sentry figure. So if you got the Sentry, that is pretty much what you get here is a Sentry. Picked that one specifically for a couple of reasons. One, it was on, it was cheap. It was easily available from where I bought it from on eBay. I wanted him to have that particular body mold. That's the Hyperion body mold. So if you have a Hyperion, or what I was actually going to use was a Crossbones initially, but then I was like, I don't want to have paint rub in between his legs there. So the Sentry is mostly a yellow figure already, and that pin in between his legs is already yellow. So I didn't paint that whatsoever. You can see the pin there. So that helps. So that way I did dismantle and crack the figure and all of that stuff, but I didn't paint that pin. It's already yellow, so no need to do that, and that just helps on paint rub all over. But for the most part, this is the entirety of that body mold, up until we get to several details like these knees. So these knees are not made. I actually took them from a Marvel Legend. So if you are familiar, this is the Shocker, older Shocker figure, the previous one that Hasbro made, and he had these knee pads on him. So I just ripped them right off. This is what it looks like when you take the knee pad off of Shocker right here. So yeah, that's all that I used for this for. And I didn't even buy this specifically for Cable. I bought this a couple of years ago because I was going to sell it. It was like, oh, I found this rare one at a Walgreens one day, I'm going to sell it. I actually did sell a couple of them on eBay, but this one it never sold. And then I started doing customs a few months after that, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to keep this for fodder. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but at least I'll have a Bucky cap mold to use for fodder. And 2 years later, I finally used it for something, and that's for these knees. And they just come right off. If you heat it up, it's pretty easy to remove them. And I did sand them a little bit on the inside and then just glue them to regular knees that were on the Sentry body mold. The other details here, I sculpted this little harness belt thing on there. So all of that is just epoxy sculpt, as well as here on the legs and stuff. Some of the detail did get lost in sanding it down, which kind of stinks. It's like there's no cut right here, or yeah, it's just sanded off. You can barely see where that cut is on that. But up here, I had like little pockets or whatever. You see some of the details there, just little lines cut into that, but it's all sculpted on. No loose belts, which is what I was originally going to do, but I think this just works out for articulation's sake, and not having to worry about it being the right size and making it too big or too loose or something like that. These X buttons right here on his chest, those are the same ones that are from the Storm. I have a bunch of these Storms, so I have a lot of those buttons, so not a problem. Took those right off of Storm and glued them on and then sculpted around them so you can have that detail that's there on his chest. So that's all that is. It'll focus one day. One day it'll focus. Anyway, so that's all of that. His wrists have these pieces of plastic on there as well. This his wrists and the guns, because the hands. These are for guns, holding guns. They're both from crossbones. So there's these little wrist things here, and then also the hands are from crossbones. Like I said, originally I was just going to use crossbones to make this cable, but I didn't want to use his boots. So I was like, oh, I might as well use a different body mold, and then also the yellow thing, like I was saying before. As far as this arm, though, so that arm and his head does come from an actual cable for what it's worth. So this was the, I don't know what era to call this, but I guess, I don't know, what was that storyline called? I can't remember, with Hope and Cable. I don't know, but this is that cable, and then this is the same arm. I ended up foddering this specifically so I can use this arm here. I did run into some complications because you can see there's a hole here, so I didn't realize until I started this that this arm for Cable works just like female figures, where you can actually pop it in and pop it off. It just sticks right in there. It's not something that that is a normal arm like these would be, like Hyperion body mold and so on, where it's like actually inside and slotted into the actual figure. So the shoulder needed to be changed out. The bicep and the forearm are the same from this figure. So this is just a regular shoulder, just like this one, and then I use epoxy sculpt to sculpt all the detail into the arm to have all of those lines. So everything on the shoulder is sculpted on with epoxy sculpt by myself. The rest of the bicep and forearm are just standard from Hasbro. That's just how that arm looks. Now, other than that, like I said, the head as well, that is also from this figure. It is the same head as this one, but it's a copy of this head. I copied this head like a year ago, and finally I'm using it. And yeah, it's the same head, but I also took a Dremel, and because all of this detail on his face, the metal, is actually like ribbed on there, so I dremeled that down to make it a little bit smoother, to make it more like regular skin. And then the eye effect piece that comes from the X-Man, from the Age of Apocalypse X-Man. You can see here's some nightmare fuel, just in case you needed some for the week. I took the eyepiece out and there's nothing inside. It's just a big hole in his head. And then I cut it down just a little bit to make sure it's not sticking out too much, and fitted that onto Cable's head, right on his eye. And then also his hair, X-Man's hair, that little frilly bit of hair, I cut that off and put that his bangs right there on his head. So you notice that his hair does look different. It's differently styled for what it's worth. I just had to sand this down and then glue that on, and then the rest of the hair is just sculpted on. Some more back details. There you go. So he has holes in his head. It's a little weird. I had an idea. It didn't really work out all that well, but it's not the worst in the world. It's just got some holes in there. That's just me not executing very well on that idea that I had. But it doesn't look bad. Other than that, that is Cable. I'm going to have to fix his hand now. I'm going to repaint that at some point, or do something. There it is. It's all here it is. Yeah, it's all nasty from holding that staff, the Scimitar Lance. And so I'll just repaint that. It's just I still have some of that blue left. Not a big deal. And then when I display him, maybe I don't put this back in his hand just to keep it clean. All right, so that is it. That is Cable. I'm glad to have him as part of the collection. Oh, I did give him, I forgot to mention, I gave him some scars on his face. Because that's Cable, so it should have scars on his face. Nice warm flesh tone there. Other than that, that is it. This Hyperion, excuse me, the Sentry body mold, unfortunately, was pretty flimsy. So he does have like some pretty loose legs. Shouldn't be like that normally. But other than that, yeah, he's like crossing his legs all over the place. Other than that, this is a pretty cool figure, and I'm glad to have it as part of my collection. And again, building Marvel vs. Capcom. So let's actually take a quick peek at those, and then let's get out of here. All right, we have a quick peek at as a comparison to other Marvel vs. Capcom customs that I have made over the last year and a half, 2 years. I've been doing these customs. We have our X-23 custom with Cable, Psylocke, and Storm. This is Storm and how she appeared in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I still really love this figure, and I think it just came out super great. I'm not changing it at all. However, Psylocke, I liked it at first, but then I've already changed my build on Psylocke, like different faces now, and I had some mistakes, like I didn't paint all the way on her forearm, and her elbow, like I should have, and then I used the wrong hand. This is too small. Some other small things here and there that I'd like to change, and especially now, like here, the flesh tone, I use a flat finish on flesh, where before I put a matte finish on everything. That's why Storm's super shiny and everyone else. Although I'm not changing Storm, I do want to update this Psylocke. But the biggest reason why is that I forgot, or at least I didn't realize, that her neck is broken on the inside. So actually, if I was going to take this head off, I would end up just ripping the neck peg right out of there. So I really need to redo it just to, in the very least, fix that issue with Psylocke. So I have to redo it now, which is fine because I wanted to change her skin tone. That was another thing about this build for Psylocke, is that I never used this flesh tone before all by itself without mixing it, and she's really light, and I wanted her to be a little darker than this, a little bit more tan. So that's that. So that will get redone. In fact, this I'm gonna be making a Jim Lee version of Psylocke, which this is kind of that, but not exactly. So I'll be making a Jim Lee Psylocke and a Marvel vs. Capcom Psylocke at the same time later on, probably later this year, and that's when I'm going to address this and fix this up. But I do have a whole video on both of these, as well as X-23 on the channel, so make sure you check those out if you are curious to know more about those right now. And X-23 over here, I am also going to remake this because I never painted her face. I just took it right from, as is, and only painted the body. The flesh tones aren't all that different, but I want something to be, I want it to be uniform. 1, 2, I put a bunch of sculpt all on her arms, and it's bad. And I didn't realize that until after I finished this. So I'm going to redo this and give her better arms. Hopefully keep her standing. And another thing, her feet, her foot claws are made of epoxy sculpt as well. Those turned out really great, but they are very sharp and very hard. And if she keeps falling like that, they'll probably end up breaking. So I don't want that. I'm going to make them out of plastic since I can do that now. And then her belt doesn't look all that great either. I'm going to actually drill some holes in them next time. And that way it'll actually have holes instead of being painted black like I did. That was just like a cheap, like a hot fix. And then maybe I'll actually give her a choker that's loose because it's also sculpted on. So yeah, I'm going to do a lot of different things with X23 the next time I actually get around to making it. But for what it's worth, these still look pretty cool and look really good next to each other. And I do have more Marvel vs. Capcom customs on the way because there's plenty to make. I think the next one I have planned is Birdie. And I don't mean, if you're a Capcom head, I don't mean Birdie like the Street Fighter Alpha character, Birdie with his like shark fin head. I'm not talking about him. No, no. We're talking about Birdie, the partner for Sabretooth that comes in. Birdie, yes, boss. That Birdie. I'm going to be making that one next. So make sure you check back in here on Ninja Turtle Customs. It's not going to happen immediately. It's going to be a little bit later on, maybe later this year. But it is going to happen. So I will have Sabretooth with his partner in crime, and I already have the gun for her and everything, so I'm pretty excited to make that Birdie. So make sure you like this video, subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on that and other customs that I'm making, and leave a comment if you really like this cable. It turned out pretty great. I did have an issue with the eye because when I put this together, I put the head on and then I ripped the eye effect piece out. So I had to glue it back on glue it on for a second time. So that really sucked. Other than that, again, all of his loose body parts and stuff, it's still pretty cool. I also didn't glue this badge on there perfectly center. It's a little off, but it still works. Anyway, I'm very happy with all of this, and I can't wait to keep it continuing to build my Marvel vs. Capcom collection because it's really exciting and very fulfilling. All right, see you guys next time. Peace.